Chapter 6. A Man's Behavior. In conflict, I was in my early 20s, full of fire and vigor, with a passion for serving God, but also with a temper that could ignite like dry tinder. I didn't think of myself as someone who sought conflict, but if it came my way, I wasn't one to back down. That fire almost got the better of me one cold December, during my time serving at a small church. We were preparing for the annual Christmas program. The church was buzzing with activity, choirs rehearsing, lights being strung up, and props being built in the fellowship hall. It was in this chaos that I met Mike. Mike was older, rough around the edges, and had the air of a mountain man who had seen his fair share of tough days. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind, and when he did, it wasn't exactly polished. To say Mike and I clashed would be putting it mildly. He had a way of questioning every decision I made, challenging me at every turn. It felt like a battle of wills, a young man eager to prove himself and an older man who wasn't about to be pushed around. Our tension boiled over one afternoon in the parking lot, with voices raised and tempers flaring. In that moment, everything in me screamed to stand my ground. Walking away felt like losing. But then a quiet voice stirred in my heart. Walk away. It wasn't easy. My pride demanded a fight. But somehow, by God's grace, I stepped back and walked away, leaving Mike standing there. That moment marked the beginning of a hard lesson. The way a man behaves in conflict reveals more about his character than any words he speaks. This chapter reflects on that lesson and explores how biblical principles shape a man's response to conflict. Through God's wisdom, we learn to pursue peace, forgive, and reflect His love, even in the heat of disagreement. Responding with peace. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Matthew 5:9. Conflict often feels like a crossroads, where we're forced to choose between fight or flight. But what if God calls us to a third way? A way that prioritizes peace over pride, relationships over winning, and God's glory over our own image? Peacemaking requires strength. Walking away from a heated argument isn't weakness, it's strength under control. True peacemaking demands courage to set aside pride and reflect God's character, even when our instincts urge us to retaliate. Jesus modeled this strength. When he faced opposition, criticism, and outright hostility, he responded with calm authority, embodying peace even in the face of false accusations and violence. In the parking lot with Mike, I learned that peace isn't passive, it's an active, intentional pursuit. Walking away didn't erase the tension, but it gave me time to pause, reflect, and respond in a way that honored God. How to cultivate peace in conflict. Pause before reacting. James 1:19 reminds us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Taking a moment to breathe and pray before responding can mean the difference between escalating a conflict and de-escalating it. Seek understanding, not victory. Proverbs 18:2 says, "Fools find no pleasure in understanding but delight in airing their own opinions." Instead of focusing on winning an argument, seek to understand the other person's perspective. This approach opens the door to reconciliation. Pray for the other person. It's hard to hold on to anger when you're sincerely praying for someone. Pray for their well-being and ask God to soften both of your hearts. Prayer not only changes the situation, it changes you. Trust God with the outcome. Romans 12:18 says, "If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone." Your responsibility is to pursue peace. The rest is in God's hands. The result of pursuing peace isn't always immediate resolution, but it reveals your character and glorifies God. In my relationship with Mike, choosing peace eventually softened the tension between us and allowed us to work together with mutual respect. The power of forgiveness. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. Colossians 3:13. After my argument with Mike, I struggled to let go of the frustration. My mind replayed the confrontation, building a mental case against him. Forgiveness felt like conceding defeat. But through prayer and the gentle guidance of a mentor, I realized that forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of resentment. What forgiveness is and isn't. Forgiveness isn't excusing bad behavior or ignoring the hurt. It's a deliberate choice to release the debt you feel someone owes you. By forgiving, you entrust the situation to God, acknowledging that He is the ultimate judge. Steps to forgiveness. Acknowledge the hurt. Most often, we don't want to let go of hurt. We justify our pain as if clinging to it somehow gives us control or power over what happened. But pain left unattended becomes poison to the soul. Many choose silence or suppression, fearing that if they admit the depth of their wound, they will appear weak or give the offender power. But the truth is, healing cannot begin until we confront the wound. To acknowledge the hurt is to give yourself permission to be human. It's allowing yourself to feel, to cry, to be angry, not to stay there, but to finally begin the process of moving forward. Forgiveness begins with honesty. Pretending you weren't hurt only prolongs the process. Bring your pain to God and ask for His healing. God never asks you to ignore your pain, He invites you to hand it over. His healing begins when you stop hiding your wounds and start trusting Him with them. Choose to forgive. Forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. You may never feel like forgiving someone who deeply hurt you, but waiting for that feeling means giving your pain power over your freedom. Forgiveness isn't forgetting or excusing. It's choosing to obey God even when your emotions resist. It's saying, I won't let this offense define me or my future. This choice often has to be made over and over again. Each time bitterness knocks, you respond, I've already forgiven. Over time, what begins as a decision will mature into healing and peace. Obedience to God often requires taking the first step, trusting that your emotions will follow. Forgiveness is faith in action. It says, God, I trust you more than I trust my feelings. And in trusting Him, He begins to reshape your heart. Let go of the debt. When someone wrongs us, it feels like they owe us something, an apology, an explanation, restitution. We want justice, and we often convince ourselves that holding on to the offense is our form of justice. But the longer we hold on to the debt, the more enslaved we become to the wound. Forgiveness means releasing the offender from your courtroom and placing them into God's hands. It means you cancel the debt, not because they've earned it, but because you don't want that burden anymore. Your healing should never be held hostage by someone else's lack of remorse. Release the need for an apology, restitution, or acknowledgement. Letting go allows you to move forward in freedom. Letting go isn't about setting them free. It's about setting yourself free. You are no longer tied to what they did. You are anchored to the one who heals. Pray for healing. Once forgiveness is given, there's still the matter of the heart. Wounds don't vanish overnight. This is where prayer becomes more than words. It becomes the lifeline between your pain and God's healing presence. Pray for God to mend the brokenness, restore your peace, and even give you new eyes to see the situation. In time, He may lead you to pray for the one who hurt you, not because they deserve it, but because you're healed enough to love beyond the offense. That's when you know forgiveness has done its full work, not just in the situation, but in your soul. Ask God to heal your heart and transform your perspective. True forgiveness leads to reconciliation, whether that's with the other person or simply within your own heart. God doesn't just want to heal the event, He wants to heal the impact. As you pray, His Spirit does what time alone cannot. He restores joy, renews love, and brings peace where pain once lived. Forgiving Mike didn't erase what happened, but it freed me from the weight of bitterness. It allowed me to see him not as an adversary, but as a fellow imperfect human, loved by God. Gentle answers. Strong resolve. A gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Proverbs 15:1. Gentleness is often misunderstood as weakness, but it's one of the most powerful tools in conflict resolution. It disarms hostility and creates space for understanding and reconciliation. The strength of gentleness. In John 8, When the Pharisees brought a woman caught in adultery to Jesus, hoping to trap him, he responded with gentle wisdom. Instead of lashing out or reacting defensively, he said, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." His calm authority turned the entire situation around. Practical wisdom for gentle responses. Lower your voice. Speaking softly can de escalate tension. It's hard to argue with someone who refuses to raise their voice. Choose your words carefully. Proverbs 12:18 says, "The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing." Consider whether your words will hurt or heal before you speak. Focus on the issue, not the person. Avoid personal attacks. Address the problem without diminishing the other person's dignity. Gentleness doesn't mean avoiding hard truths. It means delivering them in love, with the goal of bringing healing, not harm. Overcoming pride in disagreements. Where there is strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. Proverbs 13:10. At the heart of most conflicts lies pride, the desire to be right, to defend our image, to win. Pride blinds us to our own faults and inflates our sense of self-importance. The cure? Humility. Philippians 2:3-4 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility value others above yourselves." Humility allows us to admit when we're wrong, seek forgiveness, and prioritize relationships over ego. Steps to overcome pride. Examine your heart. Pride is often invisible to the one who carries it. It disguises itself as confidence, conviction, or self-sufficiency, making it difficult to detect unless we ask God to shine His light on it. Psalm 139:23-24 reminds us to invite God to search our hearts, test our thoughts, and reveal anything in us that is offensive. This is the first act of humility, acknowledging that you might be wrong or blinded by your own ego. When you examine your heart before the Lord, you give Him permission to prune attitudes and motives that hinder your spiritual growth and your relationships with others. God doesn't expose your heart to shame you. He reveals what's hidden so He can heal what's broken and reshape you into His likeness. Choose humility. Humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's laying down your need to be right in order to make things right. Pride resists correction, avoids apologies, and holds on to grudges. But humility leans in, it listens, learns, and pursues peace, even when the path is uncomfortable. When you choose humility, you silence the voice of the flesh and invite the character of Christ to lead. It may mean saying, "I'm sorry" first. It may mean giving someone else the last word. But each act of humility chips away at the walls pride has built. Humility isn't weakness, it's strength under control. It takes courage to be kind and power to lay down your pride. Extend grace. Pride wants to keep score. It remembers every offense, every slight, and every failure of others. But grace wipes the slate clean. It mirrors the mercy we've received from God and offers it freely to those around us. Extending grace means choosing not to retaliate, not to gossip, and not to elevate yourself above someone else. It is seeing others through the same lens of compassion that God uses when He looks at you. When grace replaces pride, love takes root, and peace becomes possible. The grace you give others isn't wasted. It plants seeds of healing, restoration, and freedom in both of your lives. Trust God with the outcome. Pride wants to control outcomes. It wants to defend, justify, and manipulate until things go your way. But surrendering your pride means placing the results in God's hands. It's releasing the need to be understood or vindicated, and instead trusting that God is working in the hearts of everyone involved, including yours. Trusting God doesn't mean the situation will resolve the way you expect. It means you believe His outcome will be better than your ego's plan. It is faith that says, "I don't have to win this, I just need to honor God through it." God is the ultimate author of your story. When you surrender pride, you open the door for Him to write a better ending than you ever could. When I humbled myself in my conflict with Mike, it opened the door to reconciliation and growth. Humility isn't easy. but it's the foundation of peace. Turning the other cheek. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. Matthew 5:39. Jesus' teaching to turn the other cheek challenges our natural instincts to defend ourselves or retaliate. It's a radical call to grace, reflecting God's mercy in the face of wrongdoing. What turning the other cheek means: turning the other cheek doesn't mean becoming a doormat or ignoring injustice. It's about choosing love over revenge and trusting God to be your defender. Living it out. Pause and pray. Our first instinct in conflict is often to react, defend, or strike back. But wisdom begins with a pause. When emotions run high, even a few seconds of stillness can change everything. It's in those brief moments that we invite God into the situation. A whispered prayer for wisdom, peace, and self-control can redirect our heart from retaliation to reflection. Prayer creates space for the Holy Spirit to guide our response instead of our pride. Before you speak, act, or reply, pause and pray. Let God speak before you do. Taking a moment to pray may seem small, but it invites the supernatural into the ordinary, and God never wastes a prayer offered in humility. Respond with dignity. Responding with dignity doesn't mean staying silent or ignoring wrongs. It means choosing to uphold your character regardless of the behavior of others. Whether you need to speak truth calmly, set a firm boundary, or walk away altogether, do it with honor. Don't match the heat of someone else's anger with your own. Instead, be the thermostat, not the thermometer. You set the tone. Responding with dignity says, I know who I am, and I refuse to let this situation pull me out of alignment with Christ. Dignity protects your peace. When you respond from your values instead of your emotions, you preserve your witness and your integrity. Extend grace. Grace is not weakness, it's spiritual strength. Extending grace doesn't mean tolerating abuse or excusing sin, but it does mean offering what Christ gave you: forgiveness undeserved. When you extend grace, you break the cycle of hostility. You disarm offense. You show that love can win where pride would lose. In conflict, grace opens the door to healing. It takes one humble act to change the temperature of a tense moment, and sometimes grace is that act. Grace doesn't always change the other person, but it always changes you. And often, that's where transformation begins. Turning the other cheek in my conflict with Mike wasn't easy, but it taught me the power of responding with grace. It transformed our relationship and deepened my trust in God's justice. Reflecting Christ in conflict, conflict reveals character. It tests our patience, humility, and faith. But when we respond with peace, forgiveness, gentleness, and humility, we reflect Christ's love and bring glory to God. The next time you face conflict, remember these words: Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Choose peace, trust God, and watch Him work through your obedience. Self-talk. A man's behavior in conflict. 1. How do I typically respond in conflict? Do I seek peace or fight to prove I'm right? What can I do to model strength through self-control rather than aggression? 2. Have I been holding on to offense or unforgiveness towards someone? What steps do I need to take to release that hurt and walk in freedom? 3. Am I willing to humble myself and seek understanding during disagreements, even when I feel justified? What would it look like to prioritize the relationship over my pride? 4. Do I reflect Christ's love and patience when I'm challenged, criticized, or provoked? Where do I need to grow in responding with gentleness, grace, and wisdom?